All right, well, good morning and welcome to church. What a great day. Is anybody else glad to be here? You better answer that one right? It's been a good day. Hey, my name's Pastor Quint, and if we haven't had a chance to meet yet, let me just tell you the answer. The answer is 5. What's the question? The question is, Pastor Quint, how many color pairs of glasses do you own? Please write that down. It's 5. Unless clear doesn't count as a color, then it's 4 plus clear. But all right. Welcome to church. We're so glad that you're here. I'm excited. We have been in this series for 3 weeks. We're going to continue with week 4 today. But the premise of this series is this. What would you do if Jesus wrote you a letter? All right. Jesus wrote these letters through the Apostle John to these 7 churches. But how would you respond? What would your reaction be? The big thing I believe we've seen through these first few weeks is this. Jesus wants to see us thrive in our spiritual journey. I think it's why he wrote these letters, because he wants to have us continually do a checkup on what we believe. And so the biggest thing, this mic is ringing just a bit. Can we bring that down? All right, thank you. The biggest thing that has been highlighted to me through these first few letters is this. This is profound. Get ready to write this down. But life is long. Okay? Life is long. So if you're hoping for simple notes today, I got you covered, all right? Life is long. But here you go. As we've gone through these letters, this is what I've taken away. We are going to have different temptations, different struggles, and different things on our spiritual journey, and I think that's why Jesus wrote these different letters, so that we would have different things to reference and to do a checkup. Different seasons will require different lessons. So you see, these are all like unique warnings, unique messages. And I just want you to know, as you continue on your path towards Christ, what you're struggling with today might not be what you're struggling with 5 years from today. At least we hope not, right? Like that's the goal. But that is why it's so important to continue to immerse ourselves and immerse our spirit in teaching like this and come to church and hear the word and be in the word so we can ask ourselves, where do I need a checkup? Where do I need a checkup? So maybe for you, as we've been going through this, you've thought, well, I haven't really drifted away from my first love, but I'm not really willing to suffer for Christ. Like that was a hard one. Or maybe I'm not willing to repent of the things I'm doing in my life. Whatever the case might be, it's going to change. That's my point. And life is long. And so regularly go through these things and realize that circumstances change, temptations change, comfort zones change. But there's something for each of us in all of these letters at different seasons. So with all that being said, we're going to be in Revelation 2, 18 through 29. This is the letter written to the church in Thyatira. It is the longest of the letters, so we're going to be here right until the second service starts. No, I'm just kidding. All right. But before we read the letter, let me just give you some background on the city of Thyatira, all right? It was located between Pergamum and Sardis, which is probably why that's where it shows up in this list of letters. These letters were all believed to be recorded on one scroll and then sent from church to church, and they would read their respective letter. Now, maybe you're more innocent than me, and you think they just read their letter and then they sent it down the road. I think they probably were like, what's Ephesus getting talked to about over here? You know, like what's going on with these other churches? But anyways, we don't know, and maybe we'll have to ask that when we get to heaven if they did that. But Thyatira was a major trade city that connected other large cities. It was a stopping point. It was a trading post. It had a lot of industry, including bronze and brass goods. It was famous for its manufacturing. And then lastly, it was a center for dyeing industries. Now, not dyeing industries like the furniture industry in the United States of America, okay? I was born and raised in a town that at one time had 17 unique furniture companies. It's down to 1. Okay, that would be an example of dyeing industry. What we are talking about is putting color into cloth, that type of dyeing, okay? And Thyatira was well known for this. And so this was a place where they had mastered that process. And there was a woman who was a merchant for these cloths, and her name was Lydia. You may have heard Lydia's name. But we're going to actually start in Acts chapter 16 this morning, and we're going to read the account of Lydia's salvation experience. Because this all happened in the town of Thyatira. So this is actually the account of the first convert to Christianity for the Apostle Paul. This might not be the first person he shared the gospel with. We don't know that, but it is the first one that is recorded. So let me just read for you verses 13 to 15. It says, "On the Sabbath, we went a little ways outside the city to a riverbank, where we thought people would be meeting for prayer. And we sat down to speak with some women who had gathered there. One of them was Lydia from Thyatira, a merchant of expensive purple cloth who worshiped God. As she listened to us, the Lord opened her heart, and she accepted what Paul was saying. She and her household were baptized, and she asked us to be her guests. 'If you agree that I'm a true believer in the Lord,' she said, 'come and stay at my home.' And she urged us until we agreed." So she's so overtaken by this revelation of who Christ is that she insists they come back to her home and they share the good news with the rest of her family. And her home really becomes a hub for people seeking this new message, which I believe Pastor Scott has said, this was not called Christianity at first. This was just called the Way. That was the name it was referred to. There wasn't a name like Christianity or Christians, but it was just people professing belief in this new thing and then trying to figure out how to follow this new thing together. But her home effectively becomes the first church in Europe. And because she was a dealer or a merchant in purple cloth, she was most likely very wealthy and had a very large home. But regardless of all that, she used what she had so that she could minister to other people, and she shared the gospel with other people. If you go on to read Acts chapter 16, it tells the story of Paul and Silas freeing a slave girl from a spirit that had possessed her. This got them in all kinds of trouble because this girl had the ability to tell people's future, and her master was exploiting this for financial gain. So when they freed her from that, he was not happy. And they ended up getting imprisoned. Then they get miraculously delivered, probably from death, certainly from torture. But where did they go when they were released? Where did they go? Well, we can read in Acts 16:40. It says this: "When Paul and Silas left the prison, they returned to the home of Lydia. There they met with the believers and encouraged them once more, and then they left town." So this was the beginning of the church that is being addressed in this letter in Revelation 2. Lydia's home was the hub for believers, and that's where they were gathering to hear the good news. So with all that background, let's go over to Revelation 2, and I'm going to read a couple of verses from this letter to get us started this morning. "Write this letter to the angel of the church in Thyatira. This is the message from the Son of God, whose eyes are like flames of fire, whose feet are like polished bronze. I know all the things you do. I have seen your love, your faith, your service, and your patient endurance. And I can see your constant improvement in all these things. But I have this complaint against you. You are permitting that woman, that Jezebel, who calls herself a prophet, to lead my servants astray. She teaches them to commit sexual sin and to eat food offered to idols. I gave her time to repent, but she does not want to turn away from her immorality." So here's the question for us to figure out this morning after reading that from Acts 16 and then jumping ahead to Revelation chapter 2. What happened? Right? What happened? This letter starts out really good, like all of these letters so far have started out really good. But obviously something goes sideways for this church. So let's start with this reference to Jezebel. Okay, who was Jezebel? And what was Jesus trying to communicate by bringing her up in this letter? For quick review, Jezebel was a Phoenician princess who became the queen of Israel by marrying King Ahab in the 9th century. She is depicted, 9th century BCE. She is depicted in the Bible as a fiercely devoted but ruthless ruler who aggressively promoted the worship of Baal. She persecuted the prophets of Yahweh. And then this last point, she became the ultimate biblical symbol for wickedness. Yeah. So you could say this was a strong rebuke in this letter from Revelation 2, right? That would be a very accurate way to describe that. But what does it mean when it says the prophet of Jezebel, okay, which is the language that is used? Well, it's generally believed to be one of two things. Both give the same outcome. We don't know for sure, but both give the same outcome. One is an actual influential woman in the church who claimed divine inspiration but was teaching heresy. I personally don't believe that this was Lydia. We don't know for sure, but I tend to think that she would be mentioned by name directly if it was, but we don't know. And then a second option would be that this prophet of Jezebel that is referenced is a title used to represent a faction or a movement within the congregation that was encouraging believers to get involved with other religions, beliefs, and then the culture of the Roman trade guilds. Remember, trade and manufacturing was such a big thing here. And a couple weeks ago, Pastor Scott taught on one of the cities, and if you were a Christian, your business was punished. But here, what we believe was happening was Christians were just affiliating with external, immoral, secular business entities to have financial gain. And so while we lack specifics on what was being taught or what sins were being committed, I believe the warning is clear for us as we read these verses and try to process what happened. And it's just two simple words. All right, I told you, I got simple notes for you today. But are you ready? These words are, doctrine matters. I believe that is the warning for us this morning. Doctrine matters. Now, you might have thought, well, it's just two simple words. That doesn't feel very simple. Sometimes the shortest messages present us with the biggest challenges. So listen to me, church. I want you to know doctrine matters. We've learned about the priority of our first love, about putting down the weight of worry, about living with uncompromised worship. Today, we are learning that knowing what we believe and knowing why we believe it and then actually living it out matters so much because doctrine matters. So, what do I mean by the word doctrine? Let me give you a couple of definitions this morning. The definition of doctrine is a specific principle, belief, or body of teachings formally adopted and promoted by a group. It acts as a guiding framework that dictates how adherents should think, behave, or approach specific situations. It can also be defined as a codified set of beliefs handed down by an authority or by Scripture. And in this belief system that we call Christianity, that was originally called the Way, I want you to know we've got some codified sets of beliefs, and they matter. We have core doctrines. They were handed down to us from Jesus Christ and through His Word, and they matter. Let me tell you why they matter. One is because people are watching. Okay, people are watching how we live, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But the first big reason that doctrine matters so much and that we can pull from this letter to Thyatira is this: we need to be able to know when something is off or incorrect so that we can do something about it. We all have a role to play in this spiritual journey that we're on, and that role is not to just be spoon-fed messages by Pastor Scott or to watch your favorite Instagram preacher or to follow your Facebook algorithm that's flooded with 2-minute sermon clips. That's not it. We need to know for ourselves what we believe. And then we need to study this word to figure it out. And when we have questions, we need to pursue answers because doctrine matters. We have a role to play, and that role is to know what we believe, be able to explain why we believe it, and then be able to live based on those beliefs. As we grow in that, when something crosses our path that isn't correct, that's false teaching, that would be harmful to other believers, we can actually do something about it. Even if that something is as simple as holding tightly to what we have been given, which is what we'll read later in this letter. Now, scholars believe that this term, sexual sin, alludes to spiritual adultery that was going on. So what does that mean? That means that somehow the leadership within this church was either turning a blind eye, or worse, even encouraging a watered-down gospel or a lukewarm stance on cultural issues that affected their congregation. So what is a watered-down gospel? Well, if you think about anything, I don't care if it's coffee, I don't care if it's concrete, I don't care if it's gasoline, I don't care if it's Gatorade, right? They all get worse if you add water to them, right? They all get worse if you add to them. They become less than what they're intended to be. It's the same with the gospel. The gospel is Jesus Christ crucified. Hard stop. That's it, right? And anytime anything else gets added to that or tries to get added to that, we are off course. And that's what was happening to this church in Thyatira. Whether it was an individual or a small movement within the congregation, either way, they were allowing something other than the simple truth of the gospel to be taught and preached within their congregation. In my research, I read this. To make a living, Christians in Thyatira often had to join professional trade guilds, such as metal workers, dyers, or leather workers. These guilds required attendance at communal feasts and dinners held in honor of pagan deities. Failing to participate meant being financially ostracized. Scholars debate whether the false prophetess was teaching that this physical participation was acceptable, or if she was even actively enticing believers in to this deeper pagan debauchery. So, all that to say, what would the modern day equivalent of this be? I think the most obvious place to start is, what are we willing to follow and consume and associate with on our phones? It's quiet. All right. Who are we willing to look at and view and affiliate through the internet that we wouldn't actually pursue in real life? It can be easy to think, well, that doesn't matter. That's just the internet. It's just the internet. No, it's not just the internet, okay? It's your heart. It's your soul. It's your mind. And they're being influenced by what you're seeing through your eyes. I heard on a podcast recently about something else, but the guy said, it's kind of like advertising, right? Everybody's like, oh, advertising definitely works, just not on me, right? It works on everybody else. I've got news for you this morning. Advertising works on you, okay? You definitely added stuff to your cart this week on Prime because it was Prime Days that you were not intending to purchase, all right? There we go. We're alive. All right. Just checking your pulse, all right? In the same way, what you consume and what you view and what you look at is having an influence on you. It's never just the internet, all right? And so we need to guard what we consume so we are not watering down our faith or watering down our obedience. Let me just put the cookies on the bottom shelf here, though, okay? Let me kind of tie this all together. In this life, we will all have situations and temptations and opportunities to compromise what we believe. And that's the warning for us from Revelation 2, from this letter to Thyatira, all right? In business, in education, in recreation, and yes, unfortunately, sometimes even in church, the brokenness of this world will try to get us off course. But we have a warning or a challenge to us right here in Revelation 2:24 and 25. It says, "But I also have a message for the rest of you in Thyatira who have not followed this false teaching, deeper truths as they call them, depths of Satan actually. I will ask nothing more of you except that you hold tightly to what you have until I come." So Jesus is asking us to hold tightly to what he's given us until he comes. Back to the big point, doctrine matters. A couple of weeks ago, we held our plugging in workshop. And at that, if you've never gone through it, we go through the essential beliefs that we hold on to. And I'm not going to do all of that this morning, but you can find them on our website. And I would just say this: it is important that you know what we profess here at New Beginnings Church. And it is important that if you have questions about any of it, you study them out, you reach out and ask those questions. Because listen, it actually matters. Doctrine matters. What we are about, what we believe matters, and you affiliating with it, you need to know how aligned you are or figure out where you have questions. All your sports statistics or political positions or the minutia of your hobby, and listen, I got all that too, all right? We're all in this together, right? That's all fine, and there's a place for it, but it will all fade, okay? But the doctrines and beliefs of the Christian faith will not fade away. They've been holding strong for over 2,000 years, and here we are in the Shenandoah Valley this morning still talking about them, all right? Cultures and governments and movements and other religions have all tried to come against them, and yet here we are. And so I'm telling you, doctrine matters. When those things of this world try to come up in our lives and get us off track or ask us to compromise, we need to know what we actually believe and why, so that we can take a stand when necessary, and so that we can be the salt and light that Jesus talked about in Matthew 5. If you need a reminder, I'm just going to read Matthew 5 here for you this morning. It says, "You are the salt of the earth, But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. You see, this is who we are to be as believers. When Jesus spoke these words, salt was used to preserve things. It was used to stop the decay of things. It was used for enhancing things and making them better. That's what we do as Christians. We preserve truth by knowing doctrine, by clinging to it, by preserving it, right? We enhance the places that we live and work and move about with our character, with our standards. That's what we do. And in the same way, we bring light to everyone who sees us when we live out our faith. We highlight the truth. We show that life is different when you follow Christ and not follow the world. So I mentioned that doctrine matters because people are watching. This is what I mean. We talk all the time about being beautiful feet to our communities, right? In every place that we go. Do you know that one way we do that is we have beautiful words? Do you know another way we do that is we have beautiful actions? And then maybe the hardest one, we have beautiful reactions. Can I get an amen this morning? All right. When people look at us and see that how we live lines up with what we say we believe, that is what is attractive to them. That is what makes people have questions, that we can answer. That is what it means in 1 Peter, that we should always be ready to give an answer for the hope that is within us. Our lives should inspire hope in others. That is what salt and light means, and that is why it's not just enough to loosely believe something. That is why it's not enough to mostly get it and just be okay with that. We need to know individually what we believe, why we believe it, so we can do something about it. So what and why do you believe? Let me explain it to you this way. Our beliefs drive our actions. I'm going to use myself as an example for this, all right? This is simply human nature. If I believe I'm an athlete, I'll do what athletes do, right? I'll work out, I'll play sports, I'll be active. Somewhere in my 20s, I stopped believing I'm any type of athlete at all right? I know, you're all shocked, right? I might show up at a pickup basketball game every now and then, but it is short-lived, and it just reminds me my jumper is a distant memory, okay? I share a birthday with LeBron James and Tiger Woods, and that's about all we share. You got me? But now, I believe I'm a motorcyclist, praise Jesus, all right? And guess what I'm doing? I'm doing what motorcyclists do, right? I'm learning how to fix my bikes when they break. I'm riding all over this beautiful country. To prove my earlier point about advertising working on everyone, I don't know if you saw my shirt this morning, there's this funny joke that says, Harley Davidson is a really great t-shirt and apparel company that sells a couple motorcycles. And that's, my closet can prove that to be true, all right? I never owned a thing that said Harley Davidson before I bought one, but it's what a motorcyclist would do, right? I mean, what am I supposed to do? So listen, my point is our beliefs drive our actions, and what we believe about ourselves manifests into actions. It's a fact of life. Our things that we believe about our family, about our religious affiliation, our political views, those all get manifested into actions. And so, church, hear me. Jesus is asking us in this letter, it said right here in verse 24 and 25, let me read it for you again. End of 24, I will ask nothing more of you except that you hold tightly to what you have until I come. He's asking nothing more of us than we hold tightly to what we have until he comes. But listen, to continue to hold the things that we believe, we have to hold them at all. You've got to hold them to hold them tightly, right? So we must know what we believe and why we believe it, and then let it turn into how we live our lives. So what do we do with a challenge like this? How can you embrace a statement as big and as broad as doctrine matters and turn it into something real in your life? Well, listen, if we believe we are Christians, disciples, followers of Christ, we will do what Christians do. So what do Christians do? Well, first, we can and we should open our Bible every single day, okay? Every single day. And we should pray through it and ask God what he might be teaching us through his word, in his word, right? We should pray regularly and develop a rhythm with God as we communicate with him. We should make church a priority and gather together with other believers. And I'm preaching to the choir this morning, but Hebrews 10:25 says, forsake not the gathering of believers. And the 2026 translation of that says, don't skip church, right? Number 4, we can make sure we're in a core group that takes us deeper into the word, all right? It is so important to gather with other believers in a big setting, but also in a smaller setting, and to just wrestle through things and ask your questions and have people you do life with. We can jump in on a development group. The difference on those, a development group might be shorter and it might be on a certain subject, but it helps us to go deeper on a certain subject and to learn what we believe. So when those are offered coming up in the fall, I'd encourage you to jump in on those. But listen, none of these save us, but they help us to continue to grow into who God intended for us to be. The gospel is Jesus Christ crucified. That's it. These things all help us to walk in that truth as we embrace his core doctrines. So, when we're doing these things, we will know what we believe. We will begin to internalize what the church calls doctrine, those codified beliefs that are pulled right out of his word. And we will know why we believe it. And when that happens, and we stack days upon days, and weeks upon weeks, and eventually years upon years, people will see the fruit of our lives. People will ask us what is different about life for us. And we will have the opportunity to give an answer for the hope we have in Jesus Christ. So doctrine matters. And he is asking nothing more of us than that we hold tightly to what we have until he comes. So let's pray to that end, and then we're going to sing to that end some core truths of the gospel as we get ready to go this morning.